again, I'm Elizabeth Thomas, and I wanted to step up here to check in with all of you to see how your day has been going so far. We hope that you've enjoyed the conference at this point and that you continue to stay with us throughout the rest of the day. And I want to get you started with our luncheon keynote speaker, Mr. Keith Wyche. And what I want to do is give you a couple of notes, and you'll have some notes in your program as well, but I want to call out some items about Mr. Wyche this afternoon. Keith is now among the highest ranking African American executives in this country. Currently, he serves as president of Cub Foods, a super value company. Keith spends time doing public speaking and coaching across the country. And he is known for his signature straight shooter approach, where he uses real life examples about his journey, his college journey, and that journey and path through corporate America, and what types of practices and techniques used to reach that higher level. Keith is also the author of Good Is Not Enough, and you'll definitely get a chance to speak with Keith post his presentation this afternoon. I had an opportunity to speak with Keith yesterday at our pre-conference reception, and I'll tell you that you're in for a treat. So without delaying any further, if you could join me in welcoming Keith Wyche, and I'm sure you're welcome to take notes and give him your full attention. And here he is.
Thank you so much, Liz. I appreciate that warm introduction. I do want to have some preliminary comments. At the time we contracted me to speak, I was actually president and CEO of Cub Foods in Minneapolis. But on April 16th, I got promoted to president and CEO of Acme Markets in Philadelphia, a 117-store grocery chain. So God is good all the time. Let me talk about this organization and why I love the National Black MBA Association. You know, we talk about taking people from the classroom to the boardroom. And I am a living, walking, breathing example of that. I joined the National Black MBA Association in 1984 when I was in grad school, a student. And over the years, I've done a lot of things. I actually sit in the board of directors of WMS Industries, a Fortune 500 company. So you really can go from the classroom to the boardroom. And I owe a lot of my success to this organization. I was a chapter president back in the early 90s. And this organization was really my incubator. It was a place where I could come and learn skills. I could make a presentation that if I messed up on, I wasn't going to get fired on. I could practice just various presentations. I could learn about the financial P&Ls, and I know what EBIT is and EBITDA and EBITDA and those types of things I had no idea. And it really allowed me to really hone my leadership chops. And so I've been a part of this organization again since 1984. I'm on the board of directors and have been for about 5 years. And I love this organization. So if you're a student, I would ask that you link up with the organization because it can help you in that regard. If you are a young professional, be a part of the organization. The mentoring, the networking will only help you. If you're a corporate sponsor, this is the organization where not only can you get top talent, but you can get leadership development training events like today. And so just a great organization. She told you a little bit about me, but let me just kind of cut to the chase. I'm just a country boy from Cleveland, Ohio. I'm not very bright. I graduated from Cleveland State University. Anybody from Ohio? What is the college in Ohio? The Ohio State University, right? We call it O State, right? I went to Cleveland State. You know what they call that? No State. And got out of there with a 2.75 GPA. I did a little bit better in grad school. When everybody else was graduating, summa cum laude, magna cum laude, my grandmother said, Lordy, Lordy, just let me get out. When I say all that to say it doesn't matter how you start out or where you start out, it's what do you do when you get on the field. It's not where you've been, it's where you're going. And I've never allowed my background, my 2.75 GPA, my no-name colleges to interfere with my success. Because it's not about what you do when you're young, it's what you do when you get on the field. My good buddy, he went to a small school. They said he couldn't run fast, he couldn't catch that good, but Jerry Rice ran all the way from Mississippi Valley State to the NFL Hall of Fame because once he got on the field, he made it happen. I want to talk to you today not about my first book. My first book came out in 2008 called Good Is Not Enough and Other Unwritten Rules for Middle-Aged Professionals. And the reason I wrote that book is because when I started working in corporate America in 1980, there were not a lot of people there who looked like me. And the 2 or 3 that were there did nothing to help me. It was like, I got mine, you get yours. That crab in the barrel thing, anybody hear about the crabs in the barrel? We don't still do that, do we? Anyway, but I promised myself if I ever got to any level of significance in corporate America, I was going to give back. Because I felt I owed that to the people whose shoulders I stood on to make sure that, that next generation, I'm 52 years old, and so right now what I'm trying to do is groom as many 35 and 30-year-olds as I can, so when they walk me out of here in 10 years from now and say, you gotta go retire, there's another crop. It's about sharing. And I made that transition from success to significance. See, when you grow up poor like I did, it's always about things, right? And so for the first part of my life, it was about chasing things. I wanted the big house, the big car, and nice vacations, and I had all of that. I was living in Dallas, Texas. I had a 6,000 square foot house. I had a 4-car garage. I had a Bentley, a Range Rover, a Porsche, and a Jaguar. Had all those things. Wasn't fulfilled. You get to a point in life where you need to transition from success to significance. Because success dies when you die. Significant leaves a legacy. Had I died in 2005, 2004 when I was in Dallas, Texas, I had 4 kids. They'd grown, 2 daughters, 2 sons. My sons, dumb and dumber, would have fallen over my cars. My daughters, who were smarter, would have fallen over the real estate because they know real estate goes up in value, typically cars go down. But it's about leaving a success, leaving a legacy. And so that's why I wrote that book. This is what you're going to see today. It's called The 10 Realities of Executive Life. And the reason I wrote this book, and I wrote it with a young lady named Dr. Renee Booth, it'll be out in January. How many people have leadership aspirations? When I say leadership, executive level, you want to be an SVP, EVP, CEO, I'm talking about high level. You raise your hand. And that's good because it's not for everybody. What I have found is that so many people, when they're entry level, they can be successful because they're an individual contributor. When they get to the middle management ranks, they do real good. But the game changes at the executive level. It's like going from Little League Baseball to Major League Baseball. And too often we don't know and understand the realities of what that really means. I think my grandfather used to say it this way, be careful what you ask for, because you just might get it. And so what I'm going to take you through today is really those 10 realities that will hit you in the face when you become that EVP, that SVP, an organization, that senior leader, because I got to tell you, it's not as easy as you may think. Now again, I told you I wrote this book with a young lady who is a PhD, which means she is much smarter than I am. And so she said, if you give this presentation, you got to put a few of my charts in there so people can know that, one of us had some sense. And so she talked about the framework for understanding executive excellence. And it says there's 3 things you got to have to be able to do. You got to be results driven. You hear me talk about all the time, there's a difference between effort and results. I appreciate your effort, I pay you for results. And too often we get that twisted. We talk about how hard we work, how long we work, how many hours. I could care less how many hours you work. Did you get the results? Secondly, followership. Can you get anybody to follow you? Everybody wants to be the boss. Everybody can't be the boss. But can you create followership? Can you get people engaged? And oh, by the way, don't worry about taking too many notes because I've told them to give you guys a copy of this presentation if you want it. But just so you don't see some people write. But can you create followership? Multi-talented. Are you a one-trick pony? Do you only have one skill set? Or do you have a toolkit of things that you can do? Have you worked in marketing? Have you worked in finance? Do you understand HR? Because to be a senior leader, you have to touch a lot of bases. Somebody asked me the other day, a young guy said, Keith, you must be a real smart guy. I said, no, I'm not smarter than anybody in this room. The only thing I have over most of you is that I've touched a lot of bases. I've done a lot of things. I've had a lot of experiences. And that allows me to see the world in a different place. She then talks about something that's really important. I'm going to talk about all these later. Political savvy. Politics at the high level. If you don't have the stomach for it, you will run out of there fast. Politics are important. Understanding the organization. So these are the things that she said, hey, make sure they get it. I'm going to share with you realities that exist at executive level, help you understand how your personal values will impact your effectiveness, and then put a plan together for those of you who raise your hand to help you get there. Now again, she says, Keith, you got to talk to them about the three components of leadership: achievement, affiliation, and power. Achievement is getting things done. Got to get things done. Building relationships. That's huge. When you're an individual contributor, it's you, yourself, and I, right? You can make things happen. When you lead a small team, I have 11,000 people in my organization. I have to get things done through people. Oh, by the way, I have peers in merchandising and finance that I have to work with, and they all report to me. And it's about influence. Impact, making a difference, power. Now, these things have very weird attributes. So here's achievement. People who tend to be achievement-focused, try to outperform everybody, they define their own internal standards of excellence. That means no matter what the teacher said, if you said 10 pages for this term paper, I'm doing 20. Anybody know people like that? I couldn't stand those people when I was in school. She said 10, man. Strive to be unique and innovative. They typically set challenging goals and get feedback, but they're always trying to find a better way. And there's nothing wrong with any of these things in context, but if you're achievement-driven, that's kind of how you do it. There are other people who are like the affiliation thing. It's not what you know, who you know type people. And these are the folks who, close, friendly relationships. They're concerned about disrupting. They don't want to rock the boat. They want to be happy, positive relationship with everybody. They don't like conflict. That'll get you in trouble at my level. And they manage up very well. Suck-ups. No, I'm just saying. They can't be. And then these are my least favorite people, the power-hungry people. But we all have to have a little bit of that in us, right? They're concerned about their position, the title seekers. They love to call the shots. They try to regulate and control people. Those are folks that want to be seen and heard. And again, there's nothing wrong with any of these in context, but the reality of it is, you have to balance that. So being an executive, trust me, has tremendous benefits, both personal and business-wise. So business-wise, let's talk about it. When you are the CEO and president or senior leader of a division or department, you have major influence on the direction. I tell people, as an executive, you are the thermostat of your organization. And they look at me like, what is he talking about now? Anybody know the difference between a thermostat and a thermometer? Thermostat sets the temperature. And no matter what happens around it, it stays at that temperature. You want to be a leader that's a thermostat. You want to be a thermometer. What does a thermometer do? Up, down, And so as a leader, you've got to set the temperature and the tone. And you have to make decisions that really impact the organization. And there's a benefit to that. We just had a layoff and restructuring, or whatever you want to call it, in my company, and I get to say grace over who stays and who goes, and there's a benefit on that. Influence people's careers. One of the biggest things I love at this point in my career is to be a kingmaker. I want to, the people I mentor, my desire for them is one day, when they're about to wheel me out the door, that these people have risen up in the organization, they're senior leaders, so if I need a few more years to work, I can go and say, Liz, can you hook a brother up? I'll do anything to see me 3 more years. I want them to succeed. I want them to do better than I am. And you have total impact on the culture of the organization. Make no mistake about it. And it's so little, so subliminal sometimes. When I went to Minneapolis to run Cup Foods, I had just been in New York for a number of years working for IBM and Pitney Bowes and AT&T. And so I didn't dress like a grocer. I had, French cuffs and my name on my sleeve. And, I get there, and I don't know about the grocery business, but there's a lady here who works for Whole Foods. Where's she at? There she is back there. Grocery people typically aren't fashionistas. But lo and behold, I get there, and about 2 weeks later, everybody's wearing cufflinks. I said, wow. Now, that's the business benefit. Let's talk about the personal benefits. And I gotta tell you, I love this personal freedom. I really kind of come and go as I please. All things being considered, sure, the board will reach out to me, and my corporate CEO will. But for the most part, I have freedom to do and choose what I want to do. Personal and professional recognition. Every year, my peers, we're in top 50 blacks and there's top 100, because there are only so many of us, right? And so you get that recognition. Respect of colleagues. There's something to be said when, you're an executive leader and you can call shots and you can help somebody's daughter get an internship and, there's things, folks call you and, could you get my daughter a job, to do those types of things. Acquisition of wealth. Don't underestimate. There's a reason everybody wants to be a CEO. When they pay you $15 million to leave, who wouldn't want that job, right? You messed up, you bankrupt the company, here's your $15 million. A few weeks ago, my mother called me. I work for a company called Super Value. We're the #3 grocer in the business, and we were having tough times. In fact, I was brought in to kind of help turn that around because I had no grocery experience before I became the head of CEO of Cub Foods. And we did something that's really you never do in the business. You never want to do as a company. We told Wall Street we're going to quit paying dividends. We're going to quit giving guidance. And our stock dropped 64%. And oh, by the way, we put the company up for sale. So my 74-year-old grandmother called me, baby, you gonna have a job? I said, Mom, let me explain to you this way. I said, you saw the movie The Titanic, right? She goes, yeah. I said, so assume that my company's the Titanic, and assume we go down. I'm in a position where I get a lifeboat. There's things called stock options, restricted stock, retention bonus. I say, so I got about 2.5 million reasons why I want to stick around. So I'm good. But at that level of compensation gets crazy. So again, I'm not going to tell you, something that you wouldn't. So wealth is something you can definitely do. Not rich, you can get wealthy. You get a generational wealth. And then just status in the community. But my biggest one is the bottom, to leave a legacy for others. There's two components, and you can tell by this slide that the PhD partner of mine did this. What? The job itself. Everybody wants the job. It's the how that we struggle with. So let's talk about that. Too often, going into an executive role, people struggle with those new realities. And you have to learn to embrace these and put them in perspective, because if you're not, you will leave disenchanted. And I'll take you through a bunch of these so you can understand. So I'm going to tell you one individually, and then I'll tell you deeper down about all of them. Number one, there's different characteristics for success. What made you successful before is not what's going to make you successful now. We'll talk about that. Constructive conflict is expected. You will get into fights in the boardroom with your peers, and we'll talk about all that. Relationships are critical, more critical now. Your values may be challenged. Talk about that. The gap between perception is wider. What I mean by that, again, I'll go in detail, is the way you see yourself and the way other people see you is night and day different. Letting go is part of the process. Emotional boundaries are important. And again, you'll get this presentation from the team here. Feeling isolated is natural. Criticism comes more readily. Ask Barack Obama. Image and reputation are everything. So let's talk about these one at a time. The things that made you successful early in your career will be totally different once you become an executive. Too often you're achievement focused early in your career, and you have to be careful with that because you can't make everything happen. You have to manage relationships different. The impact of politics is greater. You gotta realize everybody wants that top job. There's only so many CEOs. And so what happens is there's this warfare that begins to take place with your peers, the people below you. There's a book that was written a few years ago called Executive Warfare. Anybody heard that book? By Philip D'Alessandro. If any of you have executive level aspirations, you need to buy that book after you buy mine. It's called Executive Warfare by Philip D'Alessandro. And he talks about, hey, the cutthroat life of a senior executive. And there's a lot more emphasis on managing up. Now, managing up is different at this level because managing up is managing to a board of directors. Managing up is managing to, if you're a division president, CEO. Managing up is managing up to Wall Street. There's nothing more nerve-wracking than have to stand before a bunch of Wall Street executives and talk about your poor performance the previous quarter. You almost have to be a magician. And so the things that really, really made you successful before, you have to almost amp those up. This was one that kind of caught me off guard. Engaging in conflict, hopefully constructive, is valued more so than conformity. You can't go along to get along at this level. Let me give you an example of what I mean by that. I work for a company that owns 10 grocery stores. There's only so much money in the budget to build new stores with. And so we have a process, and all of us want to build new stores. We have to go in front of the board and make presentations as to why, if we only got 200 million, why Keith needs 60 of that. And so you're in there talking about, hey, here's what I'm delivering. And I had to get up there and say, you want to really invest and save a lot? when their margins are 2%, margins are 6%, you really want to spend money where you get an ROI of about 12%? And it's one of those things where, my peer shoots back, well, yeah, his stores are all inner city stores. But you get these arguments, conflict. And if you're not, if you're one of those people that can't handle conflict, it's going to be a tough life for you. In fact, I would argue if you can't handle conflict, you won't make it. And then you have to have, there's a balance that you have to have. My boss says this way, you got to pick which hill you want to die on. Because everything ain't a fight. You got to know when it's okay to lose the battle if it helps you win the war. There's some things that I just won't fight for. I just won't. It's not worth it. And I don't want to risk my professional reputation doing that. But you got to pick your battles. But you have to battle. And sometimes high risk leads to high reward. I'll give you that perfect example of that. I decided about 2 years ago that I wanted to pick my own vendors for my grocery store. And that was unheard of. And I went to my board, my boss, and I said, this is what I want to do. And after much deliberation, he said, here's the deal. I will give you carte blanche to buy from who you want to buy from, how you want to buy from. But your targets for revenue and margin and EBIT, if you don't make them, you're out of here. Now I gulped real hard on that one because I'm like, oh, wow. But the good news is that because of my convictions, we actually did that. Cub had a phenomenal year, and thus I got this job. But had that not worked out, it's a different story. They had 10 companies since I've been there. I'm probably the most senior ranking president in 2.5 years. The rest of them gone. Not because I'm brilliant, not because I'm great, but because I know how to play this game. Trust me. Relationships will become more critical than your technical expertise or how much you can do. People who are technically inclined, I worked for IBM as a number of years, our strength was in what we knew. I can program in these languages, I can do this, that, and the other. At this level, it's not, I can't run a grocery. If you put me in a grocery store right now to be the store director, it would go down. That's not what they called me for. My expertise is different. It's relationship management. Having to do that. Too often, we don't do a good job of that. Early in my career, I did a horrible job of that. I didn't network across the company. I didn't go to anything they didn't pay me for. If it was a golf outing after work, I'm like, they paying me? Well, I'm not going. Here's what I didn't realize. I was missing out on an exposure opportunity to be able to network with people that could really advance my career. So that retirement party for that beloved executive that was after hours I didn't want to go to, I started going to those. That Saturday afternoon golf event where I didn't really want to go, I started going because you have to build those relationships because they become critical. And you have to manage people that you don't have control over. You don't sign their check. And you have to do that through influence and persuasion. It's a people business. I tell people all the time, I'm not in the grocery business. I'm in the people business, just happen to sell groceries. And you have to manage your image and your professional reputation at all times. And if you are a woman and a person of color, even more so. We don't get second chances too often. Ask Carly Fiorina. Doesn't happen. Ask the people that get tossed out of some of the other, we just don't get those. And so you really have to manage your image and your reputation. So relationships are important. Values. Your beliefs and values will be challenged in ways that you cannot imagine. And you have to make decisions sometimes that will really tell you. This one was so big, I wrote some of them down, some of the challenges I've had to face that were value challenges in my career in the last 2 years. So the first one, when you run a grocery store, you have a lot of vendors who want to get shelf space in your store. And they will offer you the world if you're not careful. I could be in London right now at the Olympics because 3 of my vendors tried to offer me full first-class flights over to London under the table for some additional shelf space. Now my cousin Ray would have took that deal. Ray would have done it. Ray wouldn't be here today. 2 years ago at Cub, I was approached to be the sponsor of the Gay Pride Parade. I chose to sponsor that. There were people in the community, people in the company, how dare you sponsor? I said, well, the way I look at it, they buy groceries just like everybody else. We sponsor everything else. So unless somebody's doing something illegal, I'll sponsor that. My personal values can't get in the way of what needs to be done from business perspective. I think I talked about restructuring and downsizing. You know, it's very difficult to look people in the face who have done nothing wrong. They just happen to be in the wrong seat when the music stops. Hard-working people. So usually when you think about layoffs and downsizing, you think about people who are not performing. No. In this economy, great performers who are in the wrong seat can end up leaving. And it's tough, and it pulls at you. And then, you know, there's just several examples, but you have to always make sure that you balance your personal beliefs and your personal values, but you don't compromise those. There's certain things I just will not do. There are certain places I just will not go. And if that means I don't get your business, I don't get your business. And those can be some tough decisions because, you know, people peer pressure. I'm sorry. At 52, I'm beyond peer pressure. You know, and so you have to really hold to your guns because, again, you'll be amazed at things that will come your way, and so your values will really, really be challenged. The gap between how you see yourself and how you see others will often widen. You think you're this down-to-earth, you know, really not. The title alone will scare people. When people hear president, CEO, people hear executive vice president, you expect that person to be stuffy and, you know, uptight. You know, most people expect that. And of course, you know, you have to understand that your influence. So you'll love this story. I get to Cup Foods 2.5 years ago, and I mentioned in passing, I like red velvet cake. That's all I said. To just some people passing by, we having dessert or something. About 2 weeks later, I started visiting my stores, and I go to the bakery and I see red velvet cake, red velvet donuts, red velvet donut holes, red velvet cupcakes. And so I'm like, I didn't know people in Minnesota ate this much red velvet. You know what the bakery manager told me? We heard that you said that every store has to sell red velvet products. I never said that. What I said was, I like red velvet cake. And it's funny, but it goes both ways. It's one of those things how you see yourself, totally different. And I struggled with this because, again, I came to the grocery industry from, you know, basically Wall Street, and they weren't used to me. Most people in the grocery industry, no disrespect, started bagging groceries at 16, worked their way up, maybe went past the college, maybe went in the door and out the other, but they're different. And so I had to understand that they saw me as, you know, this New Yorker who, you know, so to get over that, I could have done two things. I had a 360 evaluation, and we'll talk about that. And that was a blind spot for me, is that people were threatened by me. And I'm not the most personal. You probably don't believe this, but how many people have done Myers-Briggs before? Myers-Briggs. Just shout, what do you think I am when you think about your mouth?
INTJ.
INTJ? That means introvert for those who haven't. ENTJ? I'm the biggest ISTJ ever. I've taken it 5 times, and the more I take it, the more introverted I become. I really don't like people. I just put up with y'all. All the introvert means is that we get our power from within. That's all that means. It doesn't mean we don't like people. It just means that I'm fine by myself. I get energized. I don't need to be around here. If you really want to see me struggle, go to a cocktail party with me. You really have to try to chit-chat, because I don't really care about your kids, how your day went. I have to pretend to do that because as a leader, people want to know you care. People don't care what you know until they know that you care. And so I do this thing twice a month. I call it Coffee with Keith. And I bring in all the lower level executives and some of the mid-level, and we just sit around the table and we talk. I show them pictures of the family, we talk. I mean, and it's not a business conversation. They can ask me questions then, but I did that because they got to see that I was not this person that they thought about. You know, I'm Keith Wyche, not KeithWyche.com. And so too often, you know, you have to make sure that you understand, and you have to set boundaries with relationships. One of the things that's really difficult sometimes is I love to help women and people of color. But I have to be careful not to have the perception that that's all I care about. And so I work with all the different affinity groups, I mean, you name it, but I have to make sure, you know, any old white man can come to any session I have, I'm not gonna leave you out, because I don't want the perception that's all. Not really, I'm sorry, she's shaking her head like, Lord have mercy, I thought he was an executive. No, you straight shooter approach he told you about, I never give that up. But the fact of the matter is, it'll widen with your friends and family. Once you start climbing that ladder, once you become successful, you have to be careful around friends and family sometimes because of their perception of it. My family liked to borrow money, so I had to tell them I am not a bank. They like to come stay at my house. I say, it's a house, not a hotel. You know? So again, you have to manage all those. Others will be more critical of your performance. Criticism is just a part of leadership. Understand that when you raise your hand to be an executive, be a leader, criticism is coming your way. And there's a lot of reasons for that. First of all, people like somebody to blame. Just a given, human nature. Second, people like to criticize. And typically I find people criticize folks about things that they can't do themselves. I was in Vegas not too long ago. Here's Celine Dion. Anybody heard Celine Dion? Wonderful singer. Show was over, standing ovation. The lady next to me goes, she sounded all right, but I didn't like any of her outfits. And I said to myself, I bet she can't sing or fashion designer. But again, people like to be critical, and you have to have thick skin. I never forget when President Obama was doing an interview, there was a fly that was bothering him, and he killed the fly. And the next day, PETA was all over him for killing the fly. Anybody remember that story? Yeah, and I'm sitting there going, man, can't kill a fly. You know, but understand, and oh, by the way, competitors from your peers will trust me. They will smile, they will be nice, but everybody's trying to get to the top. And so you have to understand that people will be critical. Again, I'm giving you real life examples. Do not attempt to do what I do. When I say attempt to do what I do, I speak publicly, I write books, I do these types of events. And when I first did it in 2008, I was at Pitney Bowes. All of my peers were clapping. The CEO endorsed my book, so I had it covered as far as doing that. But all of a sudden, little innuendo, you know, he's not working that hard. You know, he's not giving speeches all the time. And so I had to make sure that my business results didn't drop at all. Because the first time they did, you know what they're going to say, right? Well, he wasn't out there selling books and giving talks, you know, his business. And so you have to really be careful about doing those types of things. But understand, criticism will be there, and you have to learn how to deal with it. Because trust me, it is not going. People always need somebody to blame. Letting go was a different one, and it's one of those ones I really wrote down for people who have to understand. At some point, you got to walk away from yourself. And too often we get so caught up in our titles and what we do and who we do that, you know, it's just like being a coach in the NFL. It's not if you're going to get fired. It's when. It's when. And so you have to manage your reputation all throughout your career so that when you go on to your next career, which things like board seats, running nonprofits, that you have that. But you got to know when to get out. My dad was a Baptist preacher. And one of the things that he didn't like in his lifetime was that, anybody here who's from a Baptist church? Okay. Pastor could be 95 years old, and he don't want to step down. He ain't giving up that love offering. He's not letting the young preachers preach. And so you have to know also when to, you know, because at some point you become a blocker in your career. At some point you do. I have a contract that says if I get to be CEO of all the super value, I have to, it's mandatory retirement at 65. They don't care how good you are. And too often we don't prepare for, you know, life after, so to speak. And understanding, you know, who you are, and hopefully by this time we know who we are. Because I think there's something to be said about people. I'm not a firm believer in, you know, you work on your weaknesses. Not at this stage of the game. At this stage of the game, you play to your strengths, and you get good enough in those areas that, you know, you're challenged in so that you can make it. But don't, you know, if you spend all your time working on your weaknesses, guess what happens? Your strengths then become your weaknesses. And so I always tell young people to do that. Emotional boundaries. Some people call it work-life balance. Some people call it, you know, the company can't love you back. The reality of it is, the company doesn't love you. So let's get that straight. And don't let who you are be so emotionally tied to your title. Because when you lose the title, to some people they lose who they are. You've got to understand that there's a difference between who you are and what your title is. And never forget that the first law of fiduciary responsibility to a senior executive is the shareholders, the stockholders. Every one of us can be replaced. I don't care who you are, how great you are, who you know, you can be replaced. Now let's think about balance. I firmly believe there's no such thing as work-life balance in a 50-50 world. I think there's something I call managed imbalance. And what I mean by that is there are times when the job is going to have to come first, There's a big project, there's end of quarter planning, but there's times family should come first. And I speak from experience, never lose sight of that. If you said, Keith, what was one of the things you regretted about your career? One of the things I regretted, and I don't regret much in my life, is that I spent so much time climbing that ladder, slaying dragons, to provide for my family so that they had the big house, that I didn't spend quality time with them. And you look up one day, and your kids are grown, your wife is gone. You know, because she told me, Steve, when baby girl gets out of high school, I'm out of here, brother. And I'm like, yeah, you ain't going nowhere. Baby girl rather walk the stage this way, mama went that way. Now don't get it twisted, she's trying to get her brother back now. But what she said to me was, we appreciated the stuff. We wanted you. When your kids get grown, they tell you, Daddy, you missed my father-daughter dance because you had a presentation to give out time. Dad, senior night on the football team, Mom had to walk out with Uncle Ray because you weren't in town. That hurt me. And you sit and you listen and you go, but you like them Jordans and the Nintendos. He said, yeah, we took them. But we'd rather have you. Don't lose sight of the thing. The higher up you go in an organization, the more of yourself you give up. My social life now transcends or works around my professional life. Most socializing I do is at a conference, it's at a golf outing, it's at representing the company at the Urban League. I mean, most of my social life now revolves around the job. So the higher you go, the more of yourself you have to give up. And you have to understand that. And it's one of those things that just comes with the territory. Too much is given, much is required. But try to have some balance. Because I tell you, I've seen a lot of people in corporate America come and go. And they dust off your seat, they get new furniture, they bring somebody else in. And any company that does anything about succession planning should do it that way. Isolation. Another one of those things. Now, I have no problem with isolation. I'm an introvert. But you have to understand, when you're the boss, there's secrets you have to be able. I knew 2 weeks before we made the announcement what was going to happen. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't change my facial expression. I couldn't do anything. Because as a leader, it was important for me to just maintain that confidentiality. There are people who I'm friendly with. I don't go to work to make friends. I go to work to make money. But there's some people I'm friendly with, and I can know you about to get laid off in 2 weeks, Doc. We frat brothers. I can't tell you that. And when you do find out, you go, man, how come you ain't tell me? There are few people who can understand your world. One of the biggest struggles I have with my family is they don't understand, some of them. If you call me during the day between 7:30 and 7 at night, you probably won't get me. I'm in a meeting, I'm at a dinner, and they did, are you a Barack Obama now? No. It's just that my days are full, and so, and then you become selective who you hang with. Because you got your reputation, right? There's some executives, I don't want to be in your company. Because, being with you makes me look a little shady, so I try and do that. And then last but not least, reputation. Everything about you, people will judge, people will respond to, and at the end of the day, your reputation is really all you have as a leader. Your integrity. Does he or she say what she mean what she says? What's your reputation? And we live in a world where so many senior executives, and I don't have to call out names, some of the disgraced ones, everything from Congressman Wiener to, you name it, you have to be so careful. I have morality clauses in 2 of my contracts. And by the way, as an executive, you typically have a contract, an employment contract. I have morality clauses in both of them. One for my organization that I work for, one for the board of directors. If I do anything stupid, if I do a Congressman Wiener and send something out on Twitter, it's game, set, match. You have to be so careful who you, and that's why when I'm out, don't take pictures on me, because I don't want to be on Facebook and, you catch me, not just gonna catch me, but, I could be somewhere and the Omega, how many people are familiar with black fraternities? By show of hands, what do you think I am? Omega Psi, wait a minute. I'm an Omega man, I'm not a Q. But we go out, in fact, we're going to Bahamas next week for a boat ride, and I'm like, don't take pictures of me. I can't be on Facebook, your Facebook page, and, swimming trunks, and, it's not a good look. A beer in my hand, cigar in the other one, somebody sitting in my lap, I can't have that. Did I just say that? your reputation is important. It really is, particularly as a senior executive because of the influence. You know, the internet, social media just really makes it even that much worse. Fortunately, I have someone who manages my social media, so, you know, if you see anything crazy, then they'll go, she can get fired. But at the end of the day, you really have to manage that, you know. When you Google yourself, what comes up online? You'd be amazed. You'd be amazed. And so your reputation means a lot. So let me ask you a question. Can senior leaders recover from big mistakes? So who thinks without question, you know, if you handle it right, you can recover from a big mistake? Okay? How many say, yeah, it depends on the company and the culture? Okay? How many says hardly ever? Most organizations have a long memory, you know. Anybody think that? The reality of it is for most folks, I would say it's a combination of 1, 2, and 3. It depends on how big the mistake was, but an ethical mistake. Were you the head of Best Buy who was married at 52, dating a 25-year-old sales clerk? You don't recover from that. That's a one-way ticket out the door. A bad hire, you might get away with. So again, it depends on the degree. But the fact of the matter is, when you're senior level, the mirror, the microscope is always on you. And in this environment, assume people are always watching. So here's the things I tell you that are really competencies for executive success. First of all, self-confidence. You've got to believe in yourself. And when you put a strategy in place, you've got to believe it's the right one and at least give it time to work. Nothing is worse than the leader who this month we going this way, next month we go, you know. And it's hard to do because sometimes when you put a strategy in place, it doesn't turn right away. It takes time, right? Particularly if you inherited a mess, it takes time. But you have to have that confidence, even under stress, to make sure that you've done what you thought. Ability to impact and influence. You got to persuade people. You've got to be able to tell your story in a compelling way. You've got to create camaraderie. You know, there's a time when, you know, another part of my career where, you know, if I mentored you and I sponsored you and I wanted to get you a promotion, I may have to take somebody from another division that I really didn't want to get you there. You know, those things happen. Those things happen, trust me, all the time. Visionary leadership. You've got to be able to think and see future state of what you think the industry is going to be like or you think your field's going to be like, and then create and galvanize followership. Get people to believe in that vision. And there's tons of stories of people who, you know, perfect example, I was working at IBM right after Bill Gates came to IBM to offer basically his software. And the leaders at IBM said, PC, but this thing will never last. Biggest mistake they could have made. You have to be so careful, you know, and be visionary in your leadership. You know, I think about companies like Blockbuster Video. Okay, who would have thought that Blockbuster Video would be struggling the way they are? Well, somebody called Netflix came out and said, there's a different way to do this. Now Netflix is struggling because something called Redbox is out there. and so you can never rest on your laurels because the minute you do, you're done. Interpersonal savvy. You've got to be able to define your style, find your voice, and be flexible. To know that, you know, when in this group, in this situation, here's how you handle yourself, and stay true to yourself. The way I'm talking to you now, pretty much the way I'm talking about board meetings, staff meetings, because that's who I am. Now, I couldn't get away with this 15, 20 years ago. I've earned the right to be able to do this. You know, people are amazed. You're an executive and you're a black guy with a bald head and a goatee. Yep. Wouldn't have played at IBM when I was there 20 years ago. No facial hair. Still may be that way for all I know, but you know, it's one of those things that, you know, you've earned the right. And then organizational awareness. You got to be able to read the tea leaves. Too often, we don't pay attention to what's going on around us in our industry and in our company. Many moons ago, when I was in the Bell system, probably in the 90s, I talked about two opportunities that were presented to me. One was to be vice president of the payphone division. The other was to be the director of cellular. Now, I'm going back to the mid-90s when cellular hadn't taken off yet. That was like only doctors and rich folk had cell phones, a big briefcase cell phone, a bat phone in the car. So first of all, it was a director position. Payphone was a VP position. And long story short, my mentor at the time, and you always gotta have somebody in your ear who can tell you, we all need people in our lives who can tell it like it is, whether we like it or not. And he said to me, he says, you really want the vice president of payphone job? I said, yeah, I get to be a vice president. He said, I don't know if you've noticed, but payphones are starting to disappear on street corners. So in about 2 years, you're gonna be the vice president of nothing. So I followed his advice, I listened, I took the job at Cellular, and sure enough, I mean, there's still some payphones out there, most of them in the penitentiaries, because that's what it is. It is. They used to be at the airports, penitentiary. Put some money on Ray Ray's books. But the reality is that you've got to have the organizational awareness to understand what's going on. In my business, the grocery business, I got there 2.5 years ago, and the people I worked with, they had been 30, 40-year grocers. And they kept talking about the good old days, the good old days. I'm saying, wait a minute, have you looked around lately? Walmart sells groceries. Target sells groceries. The gas station sells groceries. Walgreens sells, everybody and their mama sells groceries. You gotta do something different, you're not gonna make it. Or we'll just be like Whole Foods. I said, no, we can't be like Whole Foods. They own that space. Well, we'll be like Trader Joe's. No, you can't, you have to be, and so you have to have, one, the organizational awareness and the industry awareness of what's happening in your space, and then have the confidence and the self-confidence to deliver and make it happen. The young executives, I had these same struggles, not having a seat at the table. There's nothing worse than, you go on, you think you've made it, and they send you to the kids' table at Thanksgiving. You know what I mean? When you're at Thanksgiving, you're at the kids' table and the grown-up table. You're 40 and they still send you to the kiddie table. Being excluded from critical decisions. If there's something big going on and you don't know about it, then you're not one of the big boys yet. Not being viewed as credible, even when you have the expertise. One of the hardest things that you will have in your career, particularly as a person of color, is proving yourself. There are some people who get promoted on potential. There are others of us who get promoted on what we've already accomplished. And so there's always this proving that you have to do to be credible. That can be frustrating. Unable to influence others. If you don't have mentors or sponsors or people on high, you don't have influence. And then the ability or the inability to make a visible impact. So it can be a challenge. But if you want to make an impact, I'll give you some advice. Whatever the situation is, diagnose it, make sure it's a real problem. Because we always look for problem solvers, people who can fix problems. What are the political dynamics? Who's doing what? What's at stake for you, for your career? Don't be afraid to take risks. Too often, our careers don't go where they should be because we don't want to take risks. Some risks are simple. I don't want to relocate. Well, let me tell you what. If you want to spend your whole career in Austin, Texas, you can. And you can do well, I'm sure. But I think that you would probably have a broader, richer experience if you opened yourself up to the risk of relocation. I take risks all the time. I built a career on going to companies when things are broken and trying to fix them. I'm a high-risk, high-reward kind of guy. We'll see how this last one pays off. But at the end of the day, I'm better for having those experiences. So what impact would it have? And what's the risk if you don't do anything? Too often, we fail to take chances. But in the words of my grandfather, don't be no fool. Take calculated risk. Test the waters. What other alternatives are there? And then take appropriate action. A few words of wisdom. Don't rush to judgment without analyzing the situation first. Take your time to do the facts. Talk to somebody you trust. You need people in your corner, internal and external, inside your company, outside your company. Make sure that everything about you gives off clues. You know what? I hate to say this because people don't like to hear it, but there is something to executive presence and looking the part. I think I was having a conversation with somebody earlier about the whole pie thing. From GE with precision, what is it? Performance, image, exposure. And part of it is, do you even look the part? Because you represent that company, you represent that organization. You can't go out looking any old kind of way. You have to, to really make sure that you have that professional image, that professional presence. Communication style. One of the things I struggle sometimes with some of these young kids that I talk to out of Morehouse and some of these other schools, when I was growing up as a kid, I was bilingual. I lived in the hood, but I went to school somewhere else. And so when I was in school, I couldn't use the slang language that I used in the hood. And Lord knows when I came back to the hood, I couldn't, hi, how you guys doing? Anybody want to play basketball? Oh, no, that would have got me beat up every day. So, yo, what's up, play? Let's go. I mean, you had to be fine. A lot of these kids, they can't make that shift. They can't. And I'm going to get way off course, but, you know, the thing about, you know, and I'm not blaming everything on hip-hop and rap music, but, you know, rap music is entertainment. And there is a segment of the population who really loves rap music, but they see it as entertainment and they leave it there. There is another segment of the population, young folk, who try to make it a lifestyle. You can't work for me with tattoos on your, I mean, you know. And so, again, I just throw that out. We got to do a little better job of our young people understanding the difference between entertainment and lifestyle. But you have to make sure everything about you gives off a clue. And then just acknowledge your natural tendencies. Play to your strengths. Cover up and do be good enough in your weaknesses. Because again, we all have them. So this is some homework for you. When you get, I want you to individually consider which 2 of the 3 realities would you like to focus on. Because I guarantee you on that list of 10, there's at least 2 to 3 that you say, you know what, that might be a problem. I need to work on that. Spend time with some folks, you know, that you care about and they know you, and just talk about some of the challenges you have. I'm a real big believer, don't come to these type of events and listen, you know, like again, my dad was a preacher, and we always had, he had a spring revival and he had a fall revival. And I said, Dad, why do you have a spring revival and a fall? You just had one in spring. He said, well, he said, I do the spring revival. He said, but then I got to do a fall one again because they went back to sitting like they was before the last revival. So, you know, you don't want to be in that situation. You want to always make sure. But make sure that you talk to some folks and then put a plan together. What you write down is what you do. Put a plan together. Call it your individual development plan, call it whatever you want to call it. But we spend more time planning our vacations than we do our careers. And so I just want to encourage you to really take some time and plan what it is that you want to do. So that's the end of our formal presentation. I don't know if there's time for any questions and answers, but if not, I see Greg coming. You know, come to get the mic from me, man? I'm still on? All right. So having done that, one more, thank you for having me here. Hopefully I shared some insight on a few things, gave you something to think about. But there's some microphones out there. Here's one. I mean, any questions? Any, you know, comment? In fact, I'll give you this microphone too, so you have two. Should be on. It's not on. Get that microphone from Best Buy.
Just some thoughts or advice with some of the things you shared, given the economy right now and how that might impact someone's move up the ladder.
Yeah, you know, when I first wrote my book, I was talking about how to climb the ladder. Right now, it's about staying on the ladder. And it is. I mean, this is the worst economy since the Great Depression. And so it's really important that you kind of look at things like, you know, maybe a lateral position that will give you more skills and more tools for your tool belt might be a more realistic expectation than I'm getting promoted to. I mean, just in this environment, you know, companies are, you know, few and far between with promotions. There's a ton of unemployed people who are multi-talented, who are willing to work cheaper than, you know, and this is a value thing, so here's a perfect thing. We had some openings in my company, and there were people who were really, to me, overqualified, but could do the job, and we would offer them the minimum. And some of these folks have been out, you know, 1 or 2 years, and in my heart, I'm like, come on, you know the job pay, you know, but they accepted. Now, 2 or 3 years later, when we do an HR true-up, I'll have to probably, you know, get them up to a decent level, but so from a value thing, but, you know, right now, there's a lot of unemployed, talented people out there. And so this may not be the time to answer your question, to go to your boss and go, I want a promotion. It might be a time to say, hey, I want a different assignment. I think my favorite line I tell people I mentor is, here's how you get a raise, or here's how you get another assignment. you know, boss, I really think I can do a lot more for the company. You know, what can I do? That sounds a whole lot better than I'm ready for a promotion. So, you know, understanding this economy, it's a little tough. It's a little tough. Next question.
Hi.
Yes, sir.
Love your speech. One of the things that me and some of our advisors look at is some of the financial perils of success. How to deal with one, earning higher income and learning what you need to do afterwards. So how are you able to transition from not having much to having so much and being able to manage and handle that?
Can I answer that question honestly?
Yes.
I was worse than Lil Wayne at first. I mean, you know, who's 32 years old buying a new Bentley? I mean, you know, it was one of those things where, you know, looking back, you know, it was, so fortunately I had a mentor who sat me down and said, son, you know, you got 4 kids and a wife to take care of. Here's what you do. Because to go from nothing, I'm seeing my daughter go, my youngest daughter, she just graduated grad school. She went from my pocketbook to $75,000 a year. And I had to stop her from going at breakneck speed to get a new Audi A7 or so. I'm like, no. You know, and so it's really, it was trial and error. But more importantly, it was, you know, folks who I gave the right to check me to say, hey, you've had, and I understand you've enjoyed it, but within reason. You know, it only takes buying a car for $80,000 and selling it 2 years later for $30,000 to get you to realize, you know what, that's pretty dumb. But so yeah, you really have to, you know, and again, it's about who you spend time with too, you know, but it's one of those things you have to really manage to it. The other thing you have to be careful of is when you get in these high tax brackets, you have to find different ways to handle your money and shelter your money, or else anybody work for IRS? Uncle Sam will eat you alive, you know, and so you learn about deferred compensation. I mean, there's a lot of tricks that you can play, but it's a good problem to have. You know, but you have to be careful because it's very easy to, and in the grocery business, I don't know if they do it at Whole Foods, we get paid every Friday. And, you know, I tell the young kids, be careful with that, you know, because what happens is by the time they broke, it's Thursday, they get paid again tomorrow. You know, you have to really learn to manage your money. The best time I learned to manage my money when I was with IBM, I got paid once a month. Because if you didn't manage it right, you were eating cornflakes for the last 2 weeks. That and ramen noodles, so. But it's a good problem to have. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Hi, Keith. Marilyn Johnson, retired IBM executive.
All right.
Thanks for the plugs, even though some were positive and some weren't.
Well, when I was there, IBM stood for I've been moved, I've been married.
I'd like to say we trained you for your success this year.
And let me tell you that what you just said was true. Any professional polish I got from the training I got from IBM down, things called Aberdeen Woods, down in Atlanta, Georgia. Yes, ma'am.
Back to facts. What advice would you give? Because you very quickly opened up the fact that you spent too much time at work, ignored the family, suffered later from a relationship perspective, father-son, father-daughter, ex-wife. Some of these folks are not married. What advice would you give to selecting a spouse if you do have executive aspirations?
That's a very good question. And I can't believe you did that to me, but it's a great question. One of the things I tell my children is that you have to understand that as an executive, your partner is an extension of you, first of all. And so there'll be events and those types of things. But more importantly, they have to understand to a large degree what it is that you have to do on a daily basis to get your job done. It can't be a situation where, you know, she wants to or he wants to go do X, Y, and Z, and you have a, and so you have to be equally yoked, maybe not entitled, but at least understanding here's, you know, what success looks like. And so I had this conversation with my daughter, the one who just graduated, who's making money. Her boyfriend is a great guy. He's a sous chef. Nothing wrong with that. I tease him. I said, you're the guy who cut the potatoes up for the real chef. But what I said to her was, is he going to understand, you know, when you have to work late on a presentation? Is he going to understand when you have to make a trip out of town with your boss, or most of which will be male? Will he understand when you get to the point in your career where you have board meetings to attend, will he be comfortable if you take him to an environment where he's not degree? I mean, and so my only advice is pick carefully, pick someone, be as equally yoked as you can. I know it's tough. My other daughter says, well, everybody's not an executive. I get that. But they at least to appreciate what you bring to the table, what you have to do, because if they don't, it makes it that much harder. Now that's my take, but you seem like a very intelligent, seasoned professional. Give me your perspective on that from a female perspective.
Well, I obviously made a bad choice because I'm divorced.
See, we could have did something together.
It's not too late. It's not too late. Oh, believe me, he's sorry. I say have those tough conversations.
Yes.
And it's not that you're being judgmental of the prospect, but I've seen too many marriages go awry. And I'll be very candid, in my circumstance and situation, as long as my earnings were inferior to his,
It was okay.
he was fine.
The minute it changed.
But the minute I started questioning our investments and the way we were handling money, he was an entrepreneur, the risk that we were taking, with 2 children yet to be educated, I became an adversary, not an extension or a support person. Had I known that we were going to get to this juncture, I still don't think I would have downplayed my career ambitions. But I will tell you, had I stayed married, I doubt seriously I would have made vice president at IBM, because you have to have that spousal support. So have the tough conversations. It's important when your parents tell you, choose somebody on your own level, especially educationally. Because you're going to continue to grow if you're ambitious and you took good notes and you applied what you learned. Share some of what you learn along the way with that person. See how receptive they are to coming to events. Even a sous chef would take away some great information from this session. So I just say have those conversations up front and hire a very good attorney.
Because I'm gonna need a prenup about now. But anyway, but very true, and it's a challenge, I know, because with family, I mean, right now there are a lot more, from my vantage point, successful